Hey, this is Aaron Price, the CEO of TechUnited New Jersey. Great to be back on a LinkedIn Live with you. Very special session today. We have a program you may have heard about called the Uplift Mentorship Program, built to support women and small business founders. And we've had an incredible host of mentors come through the session. And today, very excited to welcome in Thierry Klein, the president of Bell Labs Solutions Research, one of our mentors, to talk about how you can recruit the right team, the kind of technology that you should be thinking about to stay ahead of the curve. This program with Uplift is a great partnership between the New Jersey Business Action Center community and the EDA. And we're proud to introduce resources and people to help you build your business faster and smarter, and to connect you with the many resources around New Jersey that you may not be aware of. But if you are looking to become a mentor or mentee, check out techunited.co/uplift. We put you in a one-on-one mentorship program with experienced operators. There's a community membership to TechUnited included for a year, partly in thanks to that support we've had from the state. You get educational sessions like you'll hear from today, a really great supportive network with practical guidance on how you can build faster and smarter. This is very personal for me. I've been an entrepreneur. I needed these resources. I wish I was surrounded by folks like Thierry and others who could help me, save time and money, make fewer mistakes, understand how to do things smarter and faster. And so, again, if you're interested in participating, check out techunited.co/mentorship. So for today's conversation, Thierry's been around the block a few times and leads a very impressive organization that hopefully you know a bit about, but really pleased to welcome in, at this point now, quite a longtime friend and fantastic advocate for the tech community in New Jersey, Thierry Klein.
Thanks, Aaron. It's always great to see you, and glad to be part of the program today.
It's great to have you with us. So let's start off with the trajectory of your career. What do you think were some of the important things, and especially the important people that you surrounded you with that helped you grow?
Well, it depends how far back you want to go, but I'll definitely say my parents. My parents had huge influence on me, as I think parents have a lot of influence on everybody's lives. But I think the main thing when I think about career is they encourage me to just take the risks. They encourage me to go to engineering school and saying, when I had my self-doubts in high school, am I good enough to go to this school, or should I not apply to these top schools? They just said, just go for it, see what happens. And that kind of instilled a mindset in me of no regrets. You make your decision, you go for it. And if you feel like you've taken everything into account when you make decisions, then you have no regrets about the outcome. Hindsight is, of course, always 20/20, but they had huge influence in giving me that confidence and saying it's okay if things don't work out, and do your best, and we're here to support you. And then I think the second biggest influence was my PhD advisor at MIT. And the last thing he told me after he signed my thesis before I was off in the big world was, whatever you do, don't compromise on your principles. And I think that was a very good advice, to saying you focus on what you believe in, but do the right thing, stay true to the principles, and don't compromise on what you believe is important and what you believe is right.
Some of the things I think that are universal are the idea of making mistakes and having what are perceived to be failures. Were there any early missteps in your career that and any lessons from some of those moments that have informed how you operate differently today?
Yeah, I think in research, it's being at Bell Labs and doing research, it's inherently a risky business. By definition, you're trying to do something in research or in innovation in technology that has not been done before. So it's inherently risky. And I think the biggest part is always pick the right problems to work on, and also know when to move on from problems. And there's probably been examples where I stayed with certain ideas or certain problems too long when I should have moved on, or said, this is not going to work. Don't be patient, persevere, but also recognize when it's time to move on because your approach doesn't work, or that problem is maybe not as important. Certainly when you put a business lens on it, it sounds like a really great technology and a great idea, but from a business perspective, it may not make sense. So I think my early lessons were really look at the intersection of technology, strategy, and business, and don't just look at the research side. So I was fortunate to learn that early on by having been jumped into the deep end with an internal venture that we had at that time. It was Alcatel-Lucent. And basically overnight, my department had asked me to think about strategy, business, and technology, and not just technology. And that was a huge lesson learned for me. Career defining, because I really realized I enjoyed that as much as the technology, to understand that intersection. But that's a huge lesson learned for me.
So, okay, there's a few really good things to unpack in there. The first is, how do you think about, speed matters whether you're a startup founder or, you're working inside a large organization like Nokia Bell Labs, not spending too long on the wrong things and listening to, what the market is telling you. Do you have any practical guidance, practical guidance on how you think about maybe this isn't working and when we need to pull the plug? Because, there's a sort of a save face issue. Sometimes it can be an expensive thing to continue it. I'm sure there are moments where you're motivating your colleagues to work all towards something, and then maybe at one point you got to say, well, maybe it's not working out, and those can be hard conversations. I've certainly spun my wheels too long on ideas in the entrepreneurial side without really listening to the market to say, you know what, I need to pivot or shut this down. And so, how do you think about that?
Yeah.
With stage gates and trying to keep yourself honest about what's really the right direction to go?
Yeah, of course, from a research perspective, it's quite tricky because you want to take a longer term view on what are the key technology challenges and the key business problems you're trying to solve through technology with a longer term time frame. So you don't necessarily always have that market business feedback. But I think the key is pick the problems that are meaningful. Pick a problem that solves an actual need, and identify early on who you're solving the problem for. If you're just trying to come up with technology, but you cannot articulate who in the world has the problem, what is the problem I'm solving, and who in the world has this problem. If you cannot articulate that early on, that's a strong indicator for me. And it doesn't mean that you have a go-to-market strategy built in. It doesn't mean you have your business case completely fleshed out. But if you're creating technology and you don't know what problem your technology is solving, maybe you're doing more academic research versus innovation. Nothing wrong with that. But if you want to have an impact in the real world with commercial impact, you do want to identify what the business problem is you're solving and who you're solving it for, and then and then really focus on don't go too broad. Focus on what you're doing, especially at the very beginning. Be very clear on what you're doing and what you're solving for. But then also keep validating, keep talking to, keep your eyes and ears open, and then as you develop the technology, as you build your technology, you build your business, just keep finding ways to validate. Doesn't mean take every feedback as you should stop, because there will be a lot of naysayers, but keep validating and keep staying critical of, is that a weak signal that tells me I should maybe pivot, I should stop, or there's competition? But just find ways to get that continual feedback. And of course, as you said, with everything going so fast, I think these feedback cycles have always been there, and we always had them. But now with technology evolving very fast and markets evolving very fast, I think you have to go faster on these feedback loops as well.
How do you think about, often in the case of invention, which is usually the heart of, even if we're talking about small business and entrepreneurship, as people share their ideas, they're often hearing from other folks, well, that might not work because of this, this, or this. And sometimes that's really great signal that you're moving the wrong direction. And sometimes it's just, you were right, but you have to get market traction and prove the worth. How do you think about how to ingest that kind of feedback and when to listen and when to persevere?
Well, I think it's really trying to get that validation early. And I think in technology, you always want to know that you're building something that solves a problem. And I think get then the conversation with other technologies, but also conversations with people that you think have the problem. And sometimes they may be saying, that's not a problem I care about. But I think don't ask just one person that one question. Just collect many things is probably the best advice, and get more opinions, and then kind of distill, are there common threads in the feedback? Is this one person who says this doesn't make sense, but understand where that person is coming from? But maybe you hear 10 other people saying, yeah, that sounds like a really important problem, but I don't have it now. And then you kind of need to calibrate the timing of your technology relative to the market cycle.
Yeah.
But I think with everything, you get one opinion, but get multiple opinions, and really distill the common thread in the different feedbacks. And they might sound different, but maybe there is a common message.
Yeah. I'm curious how you think about how you build out your team to be most effective. There's a common wisdom about not wanting to be the smartest person in the room. I think in your case, it might be a little challenging, but I'm curious how you think about the complementary skills to surround yourself with for you to be the most effective.
Well, certainly from a Bell Labs perspective, we pride ourselves on being multidisciplinary. We're a very broad organization as far as the technology disciplines and the research backgrounds are concerned. So I think the problems in today's world are pretty complex and may require a number of technologies coming together to build a solution. So having broad and diverse backgrounds, whether it's from any dimension, technology or otherwise, from people that have different backgrounds, perspectives, educational backgrounds. I think that's when you get the best ideas, because if you have everybody in your team that's exactly the same, you get the same ideas. So we believe very much in that multidisciplinary aspect from a technology, but also from the just the composition of the team's perspective, not just the technology backgrounds. Because I believe a lot of the really great inventions and the great discoveries are sort of at the intersection of disciplines. Maybe they're at the intersection of industries. When you bring, for example, what we do in telecom, you bring communication, networking technologies together with other industry sectors. Maybe that's how we unlock the next innovations in healthcare or in transportation or in logistics. It's not just about communication for being able to talk on your phone, but how does communication, networking, AI technologies, how do they help in other disciplines and other sectors? So I think that multidisciplinary aspect is really key. It certainly has been key to the Bell Labs success over the last 100 years. And then the other criteria when we recruit is really, are you curious? Are you curious to ask the questions? And then are you curious when something doesn't make sense? Are you just dismissing it? Or are you then curious to say, maybe there's something here that I don't understand it, but I need to probe a little bit deeper. I need to dig a little bit. And maybe that's really where the nugget of invention is, on something that was a small thing that didn't make sense, but did it not make sense because you didn't understand it, or because there was something real behind it? And I think one of our Nobel laureates once said, somebody's noise is somebody else's signal. And so being in tune to those small signals, but that means you have the mindset, you're curious to not dismiss it, but pick it up.
I've actually heard, I think it was the guy who goes by the nickname of Mr. Wonderful. I can't remember his real name, but Kevin O'Leary, I think it is, talk about in working for Steve Jobs and with Elon Musk, that Jobs was like 50% signal and Musk is like 90% signal. And he just ignores the conversations that are noise, which I thought was a really fascinating way to talk about it. That trait of curiosity comes up often. How do you have any suggestions of ways to really screen for it, to see if you're finding people who really do sort of unravel the issue, to really figure out what's going on?
So now you ask me to give away my interview question.
That's right. I might need a job soon, so tell me how to get prepared.
I'll give it away. I think one of the questions I ask candidates when we interview them is the following: is saying, if I give you a blank piece of paper and you could work on any problem in the world, what would you work on?
Love that.
And it's not a guarantee that if they join us, they will be working on that problem. But it's really, if you could work on any problem, what are you interested in? And it's really a question of, what are you curious about? What is the one thing that bugs you right now that you wish you would solve and you would have an answer? And the trick to that question is not that there's a right or wrong answer. It's really, have you thought about it? And can you articulate why? Because whatever you say, to me, it's fine, because then I want to understand why you picked that problem, why you're interested in solving that particular aspect. And the interview goes wrong if, in my book, if your answer is, well, you will hire me so I can work on whatever you want me to work on. That is probably the only wrong answer to it. But whatever your answer is, it leads to a conversation on, well, why did you pick that? Why do you think that's important? Okay, so let's say we're working on that. How would you go about it? What would you be doing as your first step? How would you define success on that? What if this doesn't work? And so it's really more conversation starter on, how do you think about problems? What problems get you excited, and how do you think about the problems rather than the problem itself?
I love that. I don't know if this is putting you too much on the spot. Well, first, are you looking for scientific answers because of your industry and you're expecting research-based sort of PhD in science answers? Or are you looking for, I've got this issue at, in my house, and here's how I've gone deep on just, figuring it out?
You mean in my interview question?
Yeah, I'm curious. In your case, are you actually are you looking for things that are relevant to the actual job, or just show me something where you've gone really
No.
deep and curious on a problem?
No. Of course, when we're in the job, then of course we're solving problems, and we ask then our researchers to ask the technical questions and solve the problems that are relevant to our corporate strategy and the portfolio of products and services that we're working on. But in that interview question, I have no notion that your question has to be relevant to your job. If somebody says, I really want to change, I don't know, cure cancer, I want to do something about climate change, or I want to do time travel, that's okay. That's a great conversation, because then it's really going to, why did you pick that? Why does that problem seem important to you? And if it's something from your personal life, that this has always bothered me in my personal life, and I wish I didn't have this at home, or I could do this new amazing thing at home, that's a perfectly legitimate answer, because it's really not about the content. It's more about the mindset and how you think about it, and can we have a conversation? Because I need to have that conversation with you, and I want to have that conversation with you when you're inside the company and we're working on the technologies for the company. So it's really getting to, how do you think about problems? How do you make progress? How do you overcome obstacles? How do you really challenge yourself with different approaches? And I will always play devil's advocate. You tell me how you want to solve the problem, I will say, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. And what if this doesn't work? And have you thought about that? And it's really just trying to really tease out the creative aspect in people.
Yeah, I love that. How do you create an environment? You talked about hiring a team with the diverse, set of life experiences as their backgrounds. I'm assuming that's because you want diverse opinions and thoughts in the room.
Yes.
How do you create an environment where challenging your point of view, or anyone, or your colleagues' points of view, sort of, that it's a welcome environment and not, risking their job?
Well, I think Bell Labs is famous for being really tough in asking questions. I think we always challenge each other, and it's not just me challenging the team challenging me, researchers challenging each other. I think that's just the environment of trying to find the best answer. And this is like really pushing your engineering mindset very far. Is like, I really want the best answer for the problem that we're working on. I think it is challenging when then you realize that I've been working on this for 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, and it just doesn't work out. But I think that's inherent to research. I think as a researcher, as a technology innovator, deep down, that not everything works out. And I think you also know that if everything works out, maybe you haven't pushed hard enough. But the other thing that we find is really useful when we stop certain project is that we're not stopping the project, we're moving on to a new project. I think if you tell your team that, okay, this project doesn't make sense anymore for whatever reason, we're stopping it, that's a hard message. But if you're saying we're ramping down this project because we want to ramp up on another project that we think is more promising or has bigger potential, then it's it's easier to convince people to gravitate to something new because now they get excited about the new thing. So I think you always want to put in, here's why this didn't work out. Here's the lesson learned. So let's remember the lessons learned, probably document the lessons learned, because they might serve us in future as well. Because what did we miss? Why did this not work out? Was it from a business perspective? Was it from a technology perspective? Did we not do enough on competitive landscape? Why are we making this decision? So you try and build your lessons learned, and I think that's what comes with experience. Also, you build up this database, for lack of a better word, of lessons learned and connections, and then you see this, hey, this problem, this project we're working on right now starts to have similarities to another project 5 years ago. So let's make sure we apply lesson learned. But then you always want to have some positive outlook for the team, saying, while we're not working on this project, here is what's exciting that we should be working on. So I think we always find it that if you stop something and then say, let's take 6 months to figure out what we're going to do, that's really, really hard.
Yeah. What's both the best, we got a question from the audience. What's the best and worst piece of advice that you've ever been given?
Well, I think best piece of advice, I have to say what my PhD advisor said: don't compromise on your principles. Worst piece of advice, I don't really have a good one that comes to mind right now. I think it's maybe, I think it was early on when I was in high school. Some of my teachers in high school said, "Yeah, don't go to that engineering school. You won't make it. It's too risky. Take more of a safer route, and don't try and go to the engineering schools." I think some people said, "Are you crazy to go to MIT and do a PhD?" So I think it's more those kind of advice. There's not a single specific one, but I think I always considered it worst advice when people said, you can't do it. And that kind of spurred me on to saying, well, now I'm just going to try and do it. And if it doesn't work out, fine. But almost the fact that you tell me I can't do it is motivation enough to do it.
I feel like you need a t-shirt that just says, watch me. I'm a big fan. That's great. I think there's so many things that are relevant. Of course, Nokia Bell Labs is a large enterprise organization, but there's so many things that you talk about with how you drive an innovative culture and team that I think are relevant to single person companies as they think about growing and expanding and being true to themselves, maintain their principles, surround themselves with great people, welcoming in different opinions. But it can be hard to figure out which ones to listen to. This is exactly the kind of thing that the Uplift program is meant to surface. So I really appreciate that. You're my primary point of contact to any space news. Is there anything going on with the moon or space in general that we should be paying attention to right now?
I think just pay attention to space in general. I think there's a lot happening in space. I think it's accelerating as an industry, and space at large, whether it's satellites in Earth orbit, for Earth observation, weather, logistics optimization, so anything in Earth orbit, and then all the way going to the moon. Early next year, we'll have the Artemis 2 mission, the first time that humans go back in Earth orbit, and then coming up in a couple of years, we'll land humans back on the moon. So that's exciting. The one that I'm that's maybe a little bit different, that I'm particularly interested in also, is data centers in space and research and manufacturing in space, and using essentially space stations in Earth orbit as data centers or research and manufacturing hubs, and taking advantage of, for data centers, the fact that you have solar energy and it's cold, so you have advantage from energy consumption and cooling perspective, and then research and manufacturing, because there are advantages to do manufacturing in microgravity, and that has, I don't understand the material science well enough, but it's fascinating to see how can you manufacture different materials, different components, and get different structural properties because you manufacture them in microgravity. So I find that quite fascinating, and seeing what we might do in space itself, not just using space for communication on Earth with like satellites or GPS, or using satellites in space to observe Earth, but really having industrial and economic activities in space itself beyond the science experiments on the, say, the International Space Station.
Can you tell me briefly what is microgravity?
Well, I think gravity on Earth is like 1G. When you're up in on the moon, it's 1/6 of 1/6G. So we weigh a sixth of our Earth weight. So that would be one example of microgravity. And when you go in Earth orbit, you still have some gravitational effect, but much less. So one example, when you build like one example, somebody told me, if you built like lotions, because there's no up and down, so the components mix much better, because if you have sort of material, gravity will pull the molecules down, but if you don't have that gravitational effect, then the molecules might mix better, and you get maybe different properties and more homogeneous creams and lotions and so forth. So the fact that there is no up, down, left, right, and the pull of gravity to bring molecules in one direction then helps with mixing the materials better. So that's just one example, but it also, I think, has effects on materials in semiconductors and device technologies and so forth. So that's I think that's fascinating.
I always find it fascinating and interesting to talk to you, because your life experience is so different than mine, and I really appreciate it. I learn something every time we speak, so it's great to have you on. For people who are interested in the mentorship program and to have a chance to learn from fantastic people like Thierry, and we've had the CEOphone.com and folks from Verizon and Cross River, make sure you check out TechUnited.co/mentorship. And I also want to thank Nokia Bell Labs for having been a fantastic supporter, and Verizon along with their support. Better Future Labs does quite a bit of programming as well. It really is a program that is very personal. I wish I was able to talk to folks like Thierry when I was in my 20s and starting out and knew nothing. And I still do this today, maybe not as publicly, but I think surrounding yourself with smart people who give you good advice and distilling that down so you make better choices is critical to success. So Thierry, thank you so much for joining us, sharing these nuggets of wisdom. As you might know, we like to end on the high five. So on the count of three, we can high five the camera. 1, 2, 3, boom. Good to see you. Thanks a lot.